Welcome back, everybody, to the MVP Real Estate Podcast, Season 3, Episode 17. We have Kevin here with Multifamily Utility Solutions. Thanks for coming back. This is your second time on. We're more in a formal setting. The last time I was in the back of my truck, the mobile office. So now we're actually in the office. Thanks for giving us the time again.
Oh, thanks for the invite back. I guess I didn't mess things up too bad the first time around.
No, it was great. It was great. So before we dive into kind of what's new since you've been on the show last, give us the 30-second elevator pitch of what services you do or what you offer.
Yeah, we basically work with multifamily property owners, whether it's mobile home communities or apartments, and we help them increase their net operating income through better management of their utilities. A lot of their utilities are often overlooked. They don't realize that they can get money from cable companies and internet companies. In certain states and certain markets, electric and gas is deregulated. They may have an opportunity to get a competitive bid. There's different ways to save money on trash removal and all those sorts of things. So that's how we can help them improve the net operating income, which then turns into an increase in the asset value.
Yep. Yeah. Those subscription things are big. Like they will make or break deals. I was just listening to a podcast where this property had been listed. It was, I think they said it was a 16 or 18 unit building, and it had been listed for over 100 days. And people kept passing it up. And this one investor called. And the issue was when they did their numbers to put out their listing sheet, they had some of their numbers wrong. So through due diligence, they actually found out that this is an incredible deal. And it was a lot of the subscriptions. Some of the leases were incorrect, but a lot of it was those subscription. I call them the subscriptions, the dumpster rentals, the leased equipment within the building, like those type of things were all kind of messed up on their listing sheet. So after they called and got their info, they're like, oh, this actually turns into a great deal. And they end up going through and buying it. So don't sleep on those subscriptions.
Well, and I'll tell you, one of the things is that a lot of people, our stuff isn't huge individually, but collectively it's material, and it doesn't get a lot of attention oftentimes through due diligence. Right. So due diligence is here's what we pay for electric, but nobody thinks, what market is it in? Can we save money there? A lot of times, and we see this often, I'll have people say, oh, well, we don't have a contract for our cable and internet services. And the truth is that they probably do. And we found them more often than not because those companies didn't just get there. They didn't just walk onto your property and start stringing lines without somebody's permission, some form of paper. And so depending on how old the community is, sometimes decades ago, that stuff didn't get recorded. And as properties sell and as cable companies and internet companies sell and things like that, it may not be included in the due diligence package, but we find it more often than not, which is why we always tell people, man, engage with us as early as possible so that there's no surprises later. We'd rather, look at something you end up not buying than not look at something that you buy and we can't help you like you thought we could.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it's so important when you're going in, especially buying an asset class of such a magnitude. It's a high dollar amount that you're going to buy. To not go through those little bits of information, those things, they're like the secondary cost that not a lot of investors go through to do. Because to me, it's a newer kind of philosophy or way to look at it. You're not buying internet like through you're buying kind of a suitcase or a bundled package because you go into different industries, correct?
Well, yes and no. So we represent the property owner. We work for you. We've got people who specialize in electric, and so you're not really buying anything from us. We're helping you manage your utilities better to either realize expense savings or generate revenue.
Yep.
Okay, so and it looks different in different markets, right? So Ohio happens to be a deregulated market, Wisconsin not. So electric and gas is more of an opportunity in Ohio than it would be in Wisconsin or Colorado or something like that. Um, Cable TV and internet really comes down to which market am I in and where and who are the providers and how competitive it is. So like right now, we're doing a ton of work in Dallas Fort Worth because it's very competitive, it's growing, and there's a lot of activity there. And very little in like Idaho, it's just,
Yeah.
you know, so
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because with our single family rentals, it is basically, yep, go out and get whatever service you want. You sign the
right.
contract, you pay the bill. I'm
Yep.
hands off.
Right.
But with multifamily, you kind of have to offer services. So this is kind of it's a realm that I would love to get into, and we're currently
Okay.
looking to get into. So this whole thing is kind of fascinating to me because I'm interested to see how old those contracts are. Because usually
Yep.
when you own a multifamily building, you own it for a while.
Yeah.
In with those subscriptions, I'm curious to see how when they signed the bill, was it 100 a month per unit, and now it's jumped to 150.
Hmm.
Which, if you have a 20 unit building, that $50 a month through the years has added up, and those
Right.
are small increment little upcharges from your service provider. And I'm wondering how crazy of a switch it would be when you buy the building and you go into the solutions you have, like what you can do with those new contracts. Now you can kind of get competitive with the new pricing of a new service provider coming in. Do you find a lot of those situations where they're just old contracts that have annually gone up 3% over 2 decades?
You know what you touched in that brief comment, you touched on so many things. So one of the things is the first thing we do when we talk to a owner is we try and determine what their goals are, right? So you mentioned that a lot of people buy and hold for a long period of time, and if they're trying to create generational wealth, a lot of times they will. We actually have a lot of clients, a lot of who buy a maybe a B class property and try and reposition it, invest in the deferred maintenance and things like that, and bring it up to an A class property. And then they've got syndication money that they need to pay back in a certain period of time. So a lot of times, those are the folks that are going to buy it, hold it for a brief period of time, few years, and then sell it off the
Yeah.
asset at a higher value, and then go and repeat that and keep making money that way. So it really comes down to, and that's one of the first things we try and find out is what are your investment goals? Are you holding this? Because that could affect the type of agreement we would recommend for them. So, and then the other thing is that, like you mentioned, the single family, the resident pays for it, and you were actually referencing what we call a bulk agreement, which is where you provide the service as an amenity to your residents.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that though. You're not obligated to do that. And that's again where the choice comes in. And we try and find out what are your long-term goals here. If your long-term goals are to buy and hold this, and you're in a competitive market, and you're maybe in an A class property or a B that you're taking to an A, in those situations, bulk might make more sense.
Yeah.
If you've got a C class property that you're just trying to, generate revenue, you may not want to put that in as an amenity because you may be capped on what you can charge for rent and all those sorts of things. So we really go through a process to help understand. And somebody's going to say, "What do you recommend?" And I'm going to tell you, every situation is different. We
Yeah.
recommend what's right for our clients, and that's really how we try and approach it. So, you described the residents paying for the in single family homes. So, I live outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and in Cleveland, Spectrum is the cable provider.
Yeah.
And so they've got a non-exclusive franchise to operate in the city of Cleveland. What that does is it gives them access to the public easements, the public rights of ways, right? So their cables go down there. If you're a homeowner there, and you want their service, you sign up and you're allowing them by signing up for service to come on your property. Okay. Now, let's say you're a multifamily property owner there, and I'm a resident in your multifamily property. I don't own that property, so I can't give them permission to come on your property. So you're
Oh
kind of the
yeah.
gatekeeper there. And
Yeah.
if you want to enter into an agreement where you provide service as an amenity, that's called the bulk build agreement. And in that situation, you enter into a contract with them to pay for the service. But even if you're not paying for the service, you have to grant them access to be on your property in your buildings to provide service to me, their customer. And that's more done on an access agreement or an exclusive marketing agreement, is when you can generate revenue for you by simply allowing them onto the property, and then you don't have that expense, but you're also not offering it as an amenity. So you have to understand your tenant base and understand, is this amenity that I'm going to offer to them, first of all, important, and second of all, is it a amenity that I can more than cover in my rent, right?
Yeah.
So if you're dumping an extra $50 on your expense line per unit, can you get an extra $75 per month per unit to cover that cost and maybe make a little bit more, or not? And that's where we
Yeah.
help. If you're a C class property, probably not. That's going to be a tough sell, right? To
Yeah.
bump rent, because a lot of the folks there, they have access to this thing called the connectivity. I'm blanking on it, but there's a government subsidy that they can dip into if they're on any government assistance, and
Okay.
they
So
can,
like a subject 8 property or
yeah, or even, yeah. So if they're on like SSI or food
okay.
stamps or anything like that,
Oh, I gotcha.
if affordable connectivity program, they can then get money from the government to offset that. But if you're paying
Gotcha.
it and you're putting it into your lease, they can't then turn around and say, "Oh, give me the money anyhow because my lease includes it." So you may be asking them to pay $75 more for something that they're getting covered by
Yeah.
the government. So that's why we got to do just the analysis and
Yeah.
understand what's your property, what are your investment goals, and what's going on. And I might be jumping the
That's a
gun here.
very good point. I didn't even think of that side of it. Because I
Yeah,
knew like with your building as the property owner, it seems, and there's like this connotation where they just like buy the building and leave. But like you
yeah,
do create a culture within your building, like with
right,
your tenants and how you operate it, and if it's clean or not. Is there a park there? Is there a clubhouse? Like all those things go into the culture of what you're creating and the culture of the people that live there. And I didn't even think about the government subsidies and the benefits that way, and how that might, you could offer a service or amenity and think it's a goodwill to your
right,
customers when it's actually a deficit to what your client
right,
base is.
right. You may, and let's face it, at the end of the day, the king of all metrics is occupancy, right?
Yes.
So if we do anything that negatively impacts your occupancy, we can't make up for the dollars we're generating for you if you then drop 10% in occupancy because of the change you made. So
Yeah.
that's why we just want to know everything about your company, your portfolio, your investment goals, your property, the market, things like that, to help
Yeah.
you make the best decision possible for you.
Yeah.
So that's really what it's all about. And if we can jump ahead to kind of like what's new lately, this whole bulk thing has gained momentum. More and more properties are offering internet as an amenity. The reason being that the providers prefer that. So they are more
Okay.
actively selling it to owners. So the reason they do that is, look, I may be making less per unit, but I got 100% of the units covered. I'm not going out there all the time to hook up and disconnect units. So I'm saving on operational costs. I get to count 100% of your units as customers, which helps me when I report my results to Wall Street and things like that, right? So So there's a lot of benefits in it to them, and they actually prefer it. They're sending one bill, not 100 bills,
Yeah.
you know, so that's less operational cost. They probably are not going to run into collections issues with larger companies like, like
Yeah.
owners. So there's a lot of advantage. So therefore, they are actively, going to people and saying to owners and saying, hey, why don't you do bulk? Why don't you offer it as an amenity? You can make money off of this. And in some cases you can, in other cases it's risky. So because you then have that liability for 5 years of being having to pay for that service. Don't get me wrong, in some cases it's absolutely a great home run win. We see a lot of activity in Dallas Fort Worth with A-class properties moving to this. But in other areas it's not as it doesn't make as much sense.
Yeah. Man, that's
So
crazy. And I want to
yeah,
get in, you had mentioned there's a way for the property owner to make money on top of these services that's on top of the rent that they're already collecting. And I want to get into that one, but I don't want to miss the thing you said about gatekeeping. So basically the lines go into the easements for the
yep.
city. And then the property owner would allow access in. Is that an aspect where you guys come in and now you can pin Spectrum and AT&T are together now, aren't they? No. They're
No,
separate still.
they're
So
separate.
if you
Yeah,
got two, if you have a Spectrum and an AT&T, you can grant both of them access. But
correct.
would they now be competing with our customers or our tenants in terms of who gets hooked up to what unit?
Yeah, you would be offering the residents a choice between those two. Chances are if they're on your property already and in your buildings, they had an agreement of some sort, right? And the pure access agreements are typically 10 years. So if your property is over 10 years old, chances are it's in an auto renew, which means we can renew that for you and get compensation if you weren't getting compensation previously, even if you're not offering the service as a bulk service. So if you're not offering it as an amenity and you're just saying, look, residents, let them choose what they want, we would talk to both AT&T and Spectrum and see if there was compensation available to you. Because sometimes, especially in a competitive situation, while you can't really grant one the exclusive access to your property, if they're both already there, you can grant one exclusive marketing rights where you're saying this is our provider of choice. When somebody new moves in, you say this is who we recommend. Yes, this other one is available, but this is who we recommend. And then because of that, you would get compensation from them as a percentage of revenue if you're
Okay.
exclusively marketing them. You may, in some cases, be able to get revenue from both of them if you do non-exclusive marketing, but you got to make sure that the agreements don't conflict with each other.
Yeah.
So that again is just it's market dependent about what services they offer and where they are, and they're also more likely to, if they're not there, or if AT&T had DSL but they can upgrade to fiber, they're more likely to do that in larger properties just because the return on the investment, right? They're putting capital into your property. And the other thing to keep in mind is we can only do this with wired providers because wireless providers aren't using your property. They're using the public airways to deliver their signal. So I don't know if you've seen those little Verizon and
Yeah, those cubes.
the little things, right? They're providing it over their signal for home internet. We can't do anything about that because they're not using any part of your property. They're using the public airways to distribute that. So that's another thing a lot of people ask about.
Yeah. I've been looking at those little Wi-Fi boxes for the job site when we move.
Yeah,
And when we're
depending on what
flipping a
your
house,
needs are, yeah,
yeah, it doesn't make sense to pull in internet for 2 months when we're there. So that's
yeah,
where those little boxes were a little intriguing, but I just don't know how strong the signal is. And because there's some houses that we flipped where we don't get cell service. So is that thing going to be a complete waste?
yeah, because they're using the same thing your cell phone does. So if
Yeah,
you
the same
don't have
satellite, I would figure.
right, or the same Wi-Fi hotspots and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it becomes
Yeah.
like a paperweight until we move and get signal.
Or it's, yeah, somewhere else, but you could yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but if you have limited needs for bandwidth, because those things don't deliver anywhere near the bandwidth that a Spectrum or an
Yeah.
AT&T can, right? And more, let's face it, I don't know about you, but I don't have cable TV video anymore. I have streaming video services. That puts more and more of a heavy weight on, your
Yeah.
usage. When I do a podcast, I try and turn off my TV and close all my windows so that I can make sure that, whatever I'm using for internet is dedicated to this.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple times when me and Dan are on just like on office days and on Google Hangouts, and my video just goes dark.
Yeah.
It's just my internet has been used up, and it's
Yep.
usually like a restart of the system and it kicks back in. But that's happened
Yeah.
on multiple occasions.
Right. Yep. So there's revenue to be made, there's savings to be had. It's just every property is a little bit different. And the big thing now is all the providers, AT&T, Spectrum, Comcast, they all want let's bulk, right? And in some cases, absolutely, it's a great thing, but it's going to be an amenity. You should look at that the same way you should look at somebody who comes to you and says, hey, you've got a 10-unit building, let's put in this Olympic-sized swimming pool as an amenity, and your property's in Alaska, right? That doesn't probably make sense, right? That's
No.
probably not an amenity that you can recoup the cost of, from your rent, right? So, hey, rent just went up $100, but hey, I know we're in Alaska, but man, we got this Olympic-sized swimming pool outside, right? Which doubles as an ice rink most of the time.
Yeah.
So that's what you got to do. You got to understand your tenant base. You got to understand their situation. You got to understand, is that amenity going to help me fill units, or
Yeah.
is it not? And
Or is
that's
it going to help me to where my end game is? Because there's been a couple scenarios that I've either talked to investors or heard where they're trying to upgrade from a C class to a B
yeah,
class. And they need, I mean, it sounds super weird, but they need their occupancy to go down. Because the only way to turn
right,
new tenants and turn new culture is to get new tenants and new culture in.
right,
So sometimes I've heard stories of like crime rate being high. So they'll go, and one of their expense items is a private security, 24/7, someone paroles the building.
yeah,
You're going to eventually get the tenants that were causing the crime to not want to live in a secured building. So they leave. So your occupancy goes down, but
yeah,
that opens up the opportunity to switch to a different class where you can start bringing in different tenants, different lifestyles, like those type of things. And
right,
this might be one of those where if you want to offer this as a service and you want this to be the culture of your building, but you just bought this and it was a C or D class building, maybe setting up the system where this is an amenity, your occupancy is going to go down in the short term. But if you look at your asset class of the overall, it will be a net positive at the end of the
yeah.
day.
Yeah, and Marcus, I will give the cable companies and the internet companies a great that they understand this, and they also understand leases, right? So if you want to provide this as an amenity, and they're coming to you and saying, okay, it's Marcus, it's $50 more per unit per month, boom, right, like that, and you don't have the ability to put that into a lease for until that lease expires, they do what's called a 1-year ramp period, understanding that in a 12-year or 12-month period, you'll go through all your leases and renew them.
Yeah.
And so you can recoup that. So they may say, look, you got 120 units, 10 of them the first month, we're going to assume are new leases and we'll just provide service to those 10. And then 10 more and 10 more. So you're not taking a huge hit. So it's at least, because that was obviously an impact, right? If you said,
Yeah.
oh, I've got to pay for 120 of them and I can't raise the rent on 110 of them, who's going to want to do that? But if you
Yeah.
can do it as they renew leases and go in, so they do make it, they understand your business on that level and have overcome that, and which is a great thing. So that makes
Yeah.
that's another favorable thing for doing bulk is the fact that you don't have to like absorb that cost. You can, kind of roll it in and ramp
Yeah.
it as leases
Yeah.
expire.
And not have to shoulder all of the weight of the financial jump on that one, which
Correct.
is super cool because you don't
Yeah,
hear that often, not to rag on the cable companies, but they often don't work with customers very well. Like their system is their system and that's what they do. And they're going to do it that way because that's how they've done it. And
right.
that's the feel I've gotten with a lot of the cable companies.
Yeah,
But you being in it, you know what buttons to push and how the leases are drawn up. Um,
right.
and the reason I thought of like the old contracts and those 3% annual increases is because when
Yep.
I was in sales, it was for facility services, so uniforms and floor mats and soaps.
Okay.
I knew other companies' contracts more than I knew ours because
Yep.
I needed to find the loopholes in there. All right, you've signed up with this company for 10 years now. Your
Hmm.
original price is not what you're paying right now. Do you have a new invoice? And then you
Right.
can compare and contrast like when you started to what it is now. And
Yep.
that was your in to get a new client out of that business or whatever we were selling to.
And that's one of the things we do. So we help if we decide that an exclusive marketing agreement is preferable and right for that property, we'll help negotiate. And our commission is tied to we work on commission only. So our revenue is tied to the resident or the owner's revenue, right? So the more we get you, the more we get because it's a percentage, right?
Yeah.
So that's really the goal is to get you as much in the one-time fee for signing the agreement, but then also in the percentage that they share their revenue. Likewise, if you do a bulk, we want to get you a one-time fee, but we also want to help you get the lowest rate possible, right? But also the percentage increase and the annual increase and when does it start down the road. So we look at all those things, and we did one the other day where we got the annual percentage rate increase to drop up 1%, and over the 5-year period of time it had a measurable impact
Yeah.
on the amount of money that they had to pay over the term of that 5-year agreement.
Yeah. And you're seeing the apps come out now. This is on like the personal side. There's apps coming out that go in. I guess they must go into your bank account and see the subscription payments. And then it'll list out, all right, you have these subscriptions. You can like click them and cancel them instantly. The company
Yeah,
actually goes back and cancels your contract. And
right.
that's what I keep picturing like as an analogy where you go through, you're that app that goes through everything with the fine tooth comb and starts canceling subscriptions and helping where you can to clean up your finances.
Yeah, as it's related to utilities.
Yes.
Yeah. And a lot of it comes down to, honestly, like if we didn't talk that much about electric and gas, but it comes down to leverage as well, right? It comes down to how big is the property? How many other properties do you have? How competitive is the marketplace? Things like that. So, I mean, electric, we it's based on usage, right? So how much are you using? How much are you paying for? If you have a 20 unit property, you have maybe an office, but maybe no laundry room, or the laundry's in the units. There's no pool. There's no common areas. There's no workout facility. You're not using that much. If you have a 400 unit property and you have multiple pools and you have a workout facility and a community room, and maybe the laundry's in laundry rooms where you're paying for the electric and all that, and not the units, there's a much greater opportunity, because the electric companies in the competitive markets are going to look at that and say, oh, well, yeah, there's a lot of usage here. I'm interested in this. I'll give you a preferred rate. Whereas if they look at the other one and be like, that's really not worth it, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many variables that go into it, and that's the one question I hate that you didn't ask. Thank you for not asking it. Is, well, what can you do for me? How much can I make on this, right? Or how much can I save? Because every single one is different. Just like when you go out to look at a property to buy, there's no two that are exactly alike, right?
Right.
There's no two that you can say, oh, well, this one, this room, this one's worth the same as. It's not like that. And ours
Yeah.
is the same. There's no two properties that are alike. Where's the size of the property? What's the class of the property? How old is the property? What's the market? What market is it in? You know, and all those things have to be evaluated. What are your investment goals? Are you looking to flip it or are you looking to hold it? You know, and all those things come up to, and that helps us paint the picture of what the strategy should be.
Yeah. That's cool. It's a very cool niche area that doesn't get a lot of focus, but it is super important. And it's changing because like right now I'm getting solar panels on my
Yeah,
roof, on my
awesome.
personal. And that was strictly because the municipality pays kilowatt for kilowatt. So if I don't use it, it goes
Okay.
back. I
Yep.
get a kickback from the city, which
Right.
like that's super great for me. The install is quote unquote free.
Yep.
Um, or no money down, I guess they would call it.
Right.
Um, is that somewhere where you guys are dealing with more and more? Because that's becoming more and more popular. So how does that go into the service providers with energy, electric specifically, in rates and I guess leverage or buying power with that?
Yeah, so we have looked into solar. We've got a partner who does solar. So we specialize in the cable and the internet stuff. I've got a broker who does the electric and the gas. I've got another guy who does the trash analysis.
So
And then
there's
we've got,
actually an electric and a gas broker.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's awesome.
So I mean they're they're kind of a referral partner of ours. So we
Yeah.
stay engaged, but we can, you know, we know him and he does all the work for us. And then similarly, there's a guy we have that's an expert on solar and he knows, you know, what to do. And he's looked at it. And what he told me is, look, he goes, the absolute best time to consider solar is before you buy the property so you can put the cost to put the solar in the purchase price as opposed to going back to investors after the fact and asking for more money.
Yeah.
So if it's part of your plan, right, your presentation, and saying, hey, we're going to go, and this one's going to include solar, and we're going to do that. So what we do is we catch a lot of people though, and that depends on the market too. Some markets are better for solar. There's
Yeah.
there's more rebates. There's, you know, depending on who the electric company is and whether they're buying services back and things like that.
Yeah.
So you know, but yeah, we've got a guy who specializes in that. So we're you know, we want to be there for all the utility needs, but we recognize that for us to be the subject matter in what we do, we want other people who are the subject matter expert in what they do. And so we work as kind of a almost like a co-op, if you will, of companies that represent utility solutions.
Yeah.
But yeah, solar is definitely something to look at. But again, I would recommend that if anybody's really seriously interested in solar, they kind of look at it before they do the final you know, the purchase.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a really good idea. But that comes with obviously planning. You guys
Yeah.
would get involved before, like during the due diligence of like, hey, we're going to build this bill or we're going to buy this building. These are the numbers we're looking at. These are the contracts that were given. And sometimes, I mean, you hope that the previous building owner has those contracts or can able to
Yeah.
find them somewhere.
Right.
Because we had just gone through and we'd organized our list of like 13 or 14 things that we look for in when we're looking at these multifamily properties of
Hmm.
our due diligence. So you'd have to give us these 13 things or 14 things, and one of those would be the utility contracts and
Right.
in what has been paid the last year, so that
Mhm.
we know that your numbers are actually your numbers.
Right.
So
Yep.
yeah, it's an important field. And was that gas and electric? Was that with you last time you were on the show, or was that something that was
Yeah,
recently?
I'll be honest with you, you got to have the right circumstances. So cable and internet is everywhere, and almost so certain markets are deregulated for electric and gas, and they're far fewer than cable, which is available everywhere. Cable and
Yeah,
internet is available everywhere. We can't necessarily do deals everywhere because it depends on the provider. Let's say you're out in a very rural area and there's only one provider and they're like, hey, take it or leave it. You know, I mean, we run into that
yeah,
sometimes. But if you're in a major metro where there's multiple providers and they're competing for service and things like that, there we can do that. But the deals we're going to get in Dallas Fort Worth are probably different than the deals we're going to get in Philadelphia or Cleveland or Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
And it's so you're located in Ohio.
right.
How do you like I'm just trying to think of your side of the business. You would contact a building owner, like it's
Mhm.
usually cold calling, I would assume, or some
We
referrals.
we get a ton of referrals, which I take as a testament that we
That's a
must be
good thing.
treating our clients pretty well because we get referrals a lot. I mean, we do market, we do a newsletter, we do posts on, obviously when this podcast comes out, we're going to promote the heck out of it like you are and try and get people that way. So we do a combination of marketing and with, email marketing. I'm always on doing some stuff on LinkedIn and so any way we can, really.
Yeah.
We
And
prefer
it's
referrals.
a testament that you're doing so well because getting into the multifamily space is a tough nut to crack
Yeah,
because
it took a while.
there's less of them, there's less owners. Like they usually buy and hold for a while, so it's not like they're turning every 5 years, 4 years. Like a
Right.
single family home, there's just a bunch of them.
Yeah,
Um,
you'd be surprised. Syndication and in the last few years, syndication and buying and repositioning and then refinancing and either reselling has become more popular than I think it used to be. But you're right. There's only but I think about it. The whole U.S. We can do business in the whole U.S.
yeah,
Think of how many apartments there are, right?
yeah.
I mean, so we've got a ton of opportunity out there, and
It's usually finding the person you need to talk to.
that tends to be the biggest challenge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep,
So it's a good thing that you got a system set up with how you communicate and go out um, and get a hold of these people because that's what we're like on step one of doing that, meeting with brokers,
yep,
like commercial brokers, because where we live in the residential space, we don't know many commercial brokers that have the connections with the person who's owned this multifamily. And then we kind of cut ourselves off too because we're trying to stay local. Where you can go the whole US, we are like trying to stay within maybe an hour of where we're all located.
right,
So that cuts down a lot. So
yeah. Well, if you're trying to, self-manage, then that you have to be on
yeah,
location. We don't. I mean, we can literally do deals via email, Zoom, and or phone anywhere.
yeah. And do you find contracts changing often from like one day you're working in an Ohio for an Ohio customer down the street, let's say, and then the next one's in California, and then the next one's in Texas.
Oh yeah,
So
we're all
do
over.
you,
Yeah.
I'm sure the contracts are widely different.
Actually, if you're using like all the spectrum contracts are pretty much the same across all spectrum, regardless of whether it's Columbus or or Charlotte or Fort Worth or LA, right? Those are all the same because
Yeah,
Spectrum does the same, Comcast does the same, AT&T does the same, and we tend to lean towards doing business with the incumbents that are already there because they've already invested the capital on your property, right?
yeah,
So if you try and bring somebody new in, first of all, you're disrupting your customers because they may have to get into their units or they may be not able then to continue to have their existing service provider, which maybe they're comfortable with. And these new people that are bringing infrastructure in, that cost goes to their return on investment, and therefore they have less left to give you, the owner,
yeah,
right? So if you've got a 100 unit property and the incumbent's already in there and they don't have to invest anything, but the new provider has to drop 100K, that 100K is part of their return on investment or analysis. And so we say, okay, what can you pay the owner to, to be on the property for exclusive marketing rights or something like that, they're going to have less than the incumbent has.
Yeah.
So in that case, we plus these incumbents oftentimes are large companies, right? Highly unlikely that Comcast, Spectrum, or AT&T ceases to exist in the next couple of years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to go away. They stay on the cutting edge, or at least near the cutting edge of technology. So that while you have a contract with them, they're going to continue to provide top-notch services. They're also larger, and while they have some service problems occasionally, you hear horror stories. Well, I waited 20 hours for the cable guy or whatever. You don't hear those as much as you used to.
Yeah.
Those things that stuck in your mind from years ago tend to stick in your mind, right? You
Yeah.
look at it most recently. I call this the airline analogy, right? So when I lived in Atlanta, I you flew Delta because Delta was the primary provider down there. And when you were looking to go somewhere, they went more places. And so, 8 out of 10 times you'd be flying Delta. Well, that means is they have a 4 times the chance of screwing up
Yeah.
than somebody else does because you use them. Your internet, your TV are in your house 24/7, right?
Yeah.
There's, it's hard to be perfect 24/7.
Yeah.
So even though you may hear some stories about bad stories, they still have the local resources available and lots of them so that if there's something does go wrong, they've got the resources to fix it more than maybe one of these independent guys who maybe doesn't have as many local resources.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's some reasons, and again, I point these out when we talk to an owner and say, look, here's some of the advantages to going here. Here's some of the advantages to going here. Ultimately, it's their decision. I never say, oh no, I mean, we'll do whatever they want, but we try and give them as much information so they can make the most well-informed decision possible to achieve their business goals.
Yeah. And I do like that you brought up that you got to wait 20 hours for the tech to get in.
Yeah,
That has not been my personal experience. I've heard the horror stories like you were
right.
saying. Mine, I work with I probably shouldn't bash the company. You'll probably know who they are. But the only qualm that I have with them is that their internet provider and their like they are two separate companies.
Yeah,
So when I call the internet side and I want to deal
yeah,
with something, they're like, "Oh, I got to transfer you to 5 other people." And
right.
I just wish they would fix that. That's like the only
Yeah,
hiccup.
it's a challenge, and similar to that, we represent owners and we do these contracts for them. But if they are a business services customer and have service just for their building and business class service for their office, that's also a different group than
Okay.
what we deal with. So, again, it's almost like us. We have specialists in each area because it's different enough that you need to have subject matter experts working on those things. It can be frustrating for the customer, certainly, but I'm not sure there's a better way yet.
Yeah. I think that's just got to come from them upgrading
Yeah,
or them working on their internal systems. So,
yeah,
and I tell
yeah.
them every
But it
time,
is.
and I feel bad because like I'm super frustrated. I know it's not you didn't create this. Like as I'm talking to customer service, you didn't
Oh,
set this system up. Not
yep,
mad at you. It's just frustrating.
right. Yeah, it
But
is absolutely.
hopefully they just keep integrating and keep getting better. So
Well,
fingers
look at
crossed
how
on that
look at
one.
how far they've come, right?
Yeah.
And okay, so I'll give a shameless plug. I get no commissions on this or whatever, but I've really gotten into reading, and there's a book called The Gap and the Gain, and I don't know if you've heard
The
about it.
gap in the gain.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it's just a life book, right? I've really gotten into life books ever since I wrote my life book. I now compare it against other
You
life
didn't even
books.
plug your own book. We're
I
gonna
just
put
kind of backhanded it a little bit. So
what all right, what's the name of your book? We'll put that in the show notes.
mine is Change Your Thinking, Ignite Your Life. And it came
Okay.
about in my recovery from alcoholism, right? So I would sponsor other guys and I would give them advice and they'd be like, wow, that's great advice. Wow, that's great advice. Wow, that's great advice. And so from that, some of the people that weren't in AA would ask me things and I'd give them advice. And so I started getting all this feedback and they're like, wow, you should write a book. Wow, you should write a book. And so I did. So change your
Did
thinking.
you ever think as a kid that you would write a book?
Hell, I didn't even like to read. I was talking to somebody yesterday. We had to read Gone with the Wind in high school. I didn't even make it through the Cliff Notes.
Oh yeah, that was Spark Note for me too.
Oh man, I didn't even make it through the Cliff Notes. I was like, is there a Cliff Notes version of the Cliff Notes? I'm like, this is ridiculous. And
Which
then
I
all
think they've come up with now. I don't know what they call it, but with Chat GPT, I'm sure they figured out some way to make it even
yeah. So I was like, no,
shorter.
I'm out. So but yeah, but anyway, the gap in the gain, right? So real brief on this. I know we're going along here, but it's all about if you're so life is here, right? And you're here in your life. And so many people measure themselves against the gap. I want to be here, I'm falling short. I want to be here, I'm falling short. Not enough people measure themselves against the gain, which is look backwards to where you were
Yeah.
and how much progress you've made. Don't rest on that. Keep going, but don't forget about all the gain you've made. And if you live in the gain, you're going to be happier, more productive, and make more progress than if you live in the gap, which is making you feel like you're underachieving. And it's just a great book. I don't even know. I think let somebody borrow my copy of it, and I don't even have it around here. I'm not even sure who wrote it, but it was just an awesome read.
Yeah. So I know the
Applies to
feeling
life,
that that
applies to
book gave you
business.
because
Do what?
I know that feeling that that book gave you, and I'm gonna read that book because I'm guilty of that one, very very hard guilty of that one.
Yeah,
But that book for me was The Subtle Art. I lent that out to
yeah.
somebody to read, and I don't know where it's at right now. But
I,
that was that impactful book that like helped my mindset switch from
yep.
a big mindset switch from W-2 to self-employed. To
Yeah,
be honest,
yeah. I read that book as well. I actually have it on my bookshelf. So yeah,
yeah, that
another
was a
good one.
funny one. That was
Yeah,
a
it's
good
been
read.
crazy. Ever since I've freed up more time, as we were talking about earlier, I don't golf anymore. I don't drink anymore. I've got more time. I'm reading more and doing more for business, and it's just so fulfilling. I've read so many books.
Yeah.
The one I'm reading right now is by a guy named David Goggins. He's an ex
Oh yeah.
Navy. Can't
Are you
hurt me.
break?
Oh my
Can't
God,
break me.
can't hurt me.
Oh, can't hurt me.
What a great book, man. This guy
Yeah.
overcame stuff that makes us all like, anytime I want to start crying about what I'm dealing with, like, are you kidding me? Look at what
Yeah.
this guy did, you know?
Yeah. He does
So,
buds is it every year, every 2 years, just so that he
I'm
knows he
still
can do it?
reading through, but some of the, and he did it with a problem with his heart for all that stuff that he did is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
he's a bad man. That's for
He's a
sure.
man. Yeah,
He is.
definitely. Definitely.
There's
So,
no brakes on his car. He
yeah.
is all
Yeah.
gas pedal 24/7.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
funny, he goes on Joe Rogan, whether you like him or not, but you listen to Goggins on Rogan when he can be a
Yeah.
little unfiltered and
Okay.
he lets it fly.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Oh, even in the book, he does. It's
Yeah.
yeah. So I'll have to check that out. But yeah, it's great. But and there's plenty more of we can sit here and talk books all day since but yeah.
Yeah, and we'll link those two to the show notes because well, one, I'm gonna get yours, and then I want to get the Live in the Gain. Was that the title?
Get the gap in the game.
The Gap in the Gain. So I'll
Yeah,
get that one because I'm so guilty of that.
yeah.
But before we go, I wanted to touch on kind of like the new and upcoming things that are either coming into the industry. Is there anything like that you get whispers of change or what's around the corner of where things are going?
Well, I mean, technology is going to continue to advance, and people often say, well, what happens if things change so much? Do I really want to enter into a 5 or 10 year agreement or anything like that? And all I can say is, if you look back, you wouldn't have regretted doing this 5 or 10 years ago, right? These
Yeah.
companies are making progress. They want to stay competitive. That's one of the reasons we recommend doing agreements with larger companies, more established companies, because if there's new technology that's going to come, they're going to bring it along, with them and
Yeah.
and and help you make sure your residents aren't leaving because you don't have the most recent technology. I mean, you think it's going to probably go wireless, the integration of phones and internet and video and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's kind of the stuff we're seeing. And then, this bulk thing, this is kind of a trend that's moving along. The FCC did pass a ruling last February of 2022, which basically said you can't give anybody the exclusive rights to your property. So, in other words, you can exclusively market for somebody, but you can't let somebody buy the exclusive rights so that they're the only provider and you don't give them choice. So the FCC, the government wants choice to be available. They want people to connect to the internet because of this, affordable connectivity program. They're trying to make sure it's not a,
monopoly of what's going on there.
thing. So yeah, so I mean, and the people are like, well, video services, nobody really has cable TV anymore. Well, some people still do, but they've even migrated that over to a streaming service in many cases. So they're using broadband services, and that's the main thing is broadband is still in the near future. That's the pipeline. That's connectivity is there. So I don't feel bad. And if I was a multifamily property owner, I'd be signing these contracts, the right one for my property. But I don't feel bad. I feel like we help people. We help them generate revenue, increase asset value, and we're not putting them into any contracts whatsoever that is harmful to their asset.
Yeah. Because the only thought that I have, and I haven't thought about it for very long, but the one thing that I don't know if it's wishful thinking, is like an a la carte TV service. So like I only watch 10 channels.
Yeah.
Could I just get those 10 channels, please, and not Hallmark? I'm never going to watch Hallmark. I don't need it on my channel selection.
Right. Well,
but that wouldn't really affect the bigger bulk buying because I wouldn't be buying 10 stations for each unit because they watch different channels than I watch. So it wouldn't really affect too much of the bulk buying in the situation you're in with bigger buildings.
It wouldn't. You've seen more of that as like a company like Paramount has certain channels that they own offering that streaming service and things like that. I can tell you why it doesn't work. First of all, operationally delivering that we're not there yet to be able to offer every single person their own total a la carte thing.
Yeah.
Operationally, logistically, billing wise. And then here's the other thing, right? So right now, ESPN, for example, gets money paid to them from the providers for every home that they're in.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a per home fee. Now, if I'm ESPN and all of a sudden half of my revenue goes away and half of my advertising revenue goes away because I am no longer in half the homes that I used to be in, my ability to provide the same product that I'm providing right now goes away because half of my revenue is gone.
Yeah.
And so the services cease to be the services that we want them to be.
Yeah.
If it makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's another reason that they are packaged in the way that they are packaged.
Yeah.
Because they need a certain amount. So otherwise, instead of, you would most likely end up, because they'd have to charge their fee per household to maintain their product. And so you would ultimately probably end up paying about the same amount for just those a la carte channels as you would for the whole, that you're paying now, and you'd have access to fewer. So like you go into buy a carton of Pepsi, right? Carton of Pepsi costs about the same as 2 or 3 that you buy in the gas station single, because it's packaged, it's together, there's efficiency in distribution and all those sorts of things. And so you get more, even if you only want 3, you get these others that you have access to at some point if you want them for about the same price.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like buying in bulk, you get a discount.
Yeah. No, it's true. I'm trying to think like higher up because
Yeah.
like ESPN owned by ABC and ABC is owned by whoever, and they all
Disney.
have this
Disney. Yeah.
tangled web of basically three people that own the TV networks.
Hmm.
So like I'm thinking if you can scale back, you're still going to get your profit in one of your branches. It may just not be ESPN, but I do see the logistic way of that being a nightmare because even now Verizon was the first one. They just started advertising, is it called My Plan? So you can go
Yeah.
in and pick what you want for your cell service. And
Hmm.
that is groundbreaking in 2023. So we have some time to make up for TV to kind of catch up and get, and that's a lot more intricate than just a cell phone, I would believe, a
Yeah.
cell
Well,
service.
honestly, some of the more neat niche services would probably end up going away because
Yeah.
so few people would be able to afford them or would choose them. They may not have enough revenue to even operate anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That would be a shakeup.
Yeah, big one.
Big one.
Yeah.
So maybe my idea is a terrible idea.
No, it's just not. It's a time. It's an idea before its time.
There we go. Thanks for spending that
Y-
positively.
You're
That
you're
was
you're
good.
yeah. You're an evolutionary thinker.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, cool. We did come up on the hour. We try to keep it to an hour, but
I understand. Yeah.
man, that was awesome. I appreciate the little tidbits and the nuggets of information you came through, and I'm excited to come upon our first multifamily and give you a call, and we can actually get some work done together.
I can't wait to show you what we can do for you, man. That would be
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
I think that'll make the third podcast even more because we can go over our numbers and we can share that as much as we legally can.
Yeah,
We'll go
absolutely.
through our problems and what
Yep.
was fixed.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
look
that
for
sounds
that
great,
episode
Marcus. I
3
can't
coming
wait.
soon.
Yeah. Yep. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, enjoy your Friday. Hopefully it's sunny
Thanks.
over there in Cleveland.
Uh, it's starting to be.
All right. There we
Yeah.
go. Well, cool. Well, I appreciate your time. And we will talk very soon.
Sounds great, Marcus. Have a great weekend. Appreciate the opportunity to come back for a second visit.
Yeah, it was fun. You'll be back again.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much, man.
Awesome. See ya. Thank you.
All right. Take care.